Great.
So this is the finance committee meeting. There's no action items on the agenda. It's just reviewing the proposed budget. The board will meet on Thursday and there'll be a vote at that meeting. So Kim, you can start.
Great. Welcome, everyone. At the finance committee meeting on January 22nd, we presented our preliminary proposed budget. That budget was posted on our website and has been publicly posted on multiple sites throughout the park per state finance law. Today, we're updating this budget proposal and presenting the highlights to the finance committee for comment and consideration. We've updated the FY25 year-end projections to incorporate additional actual results since January. And the format of the primary budget tables have been revised as suggested by the finance committee at the January meeting. Exhibits 1 and 2, which are the two main tables, now incorporate the effects of net spending on new capital projects. Also, the capital plan table at the end of the budget package sets forth total project costs and funding sources, in addition to the spending planned on these projects for the upcoming fiscal year, as has been typically included with the budget. We've made some tweaks and updates to both revenues and expenses for the FY26 budget, resulting in a very small reduction in net operating income, $226,000, not much at all. And we revised the CAP-M program, which will have effects, and I'll walk you through that effect on the bottom line at the end of the presentation. Okay, so how we updated the projected revenues. I'll go through all the projected revenues first, and then I'll go through the changes to the FY26 proposed budget. So projected revenues and expenses for FY25. On the revenue side, lease revenues increased by $437,000. Primary driver is that Classic Car Club is now staying through the end of December of this year. And we have a very modest addition for the two small concessions that we'll be adding at Gansevoort and Chelsea Waterside. That's about a $46,000 estimate for the whole thing. So that's just an estimate right now. Garage revenues projections have changed also. These are the gross revenues minus sales tax payments that we make. These are revised up $826,000 to almost $14 million. The budget previously had a 5% haircut, a contingency for economic uncertainties. Now, since we've got almost 3-4 months more of operating results, we're adding the actuals. So that's up to almost $14 million before expenses on parking garage.
I'd like to just pause on that for a second to acknowledge that that is a big moment for us. That is a very substantial increase as compared to just several years ago. It reflects really Robert Wynn's extraordinary management of this asset. It is a very difficult thing to do. Everything from the rate increase that was implemented, but carefully done so in part to try to reduce the number of parkers so that we could manage some phasing that we needed to happen for construction. That is going to be a continuing theme here for the next several of years. Calibrating the number of parkers, the amount that we should charge for the various zones here, and everything in this very, very large space is a difficult thing, and I would like to make the point that we've increased revenue substantially here as well.
Yeah, and maintaining over 95% occupancy in the parking garage. It's really been strong with a lot of active management going on. So now
that's great. Wait, are you talking about the 12,800? Just make sure I'm looking in the right places. Are you talking about the 12,885 number?
The parking income net of taxes. This is the so this is we're going through first projected 2025 before we
okay.
Go 26.
So the 14 million, got it.
Yes. So now our new total projected revenues for the current fiscal year that we're in are up to 47.3 million, which is up from the FY24 actuals, which were 43.8 million. And that was before the two extraordinary one-time payments that we had last year, 17.2 million. So year over year, last fiscal year versus the current fiscal year, up from 43.8 to 47.3 is our projection. So we've also made some tweaks on the expense side, which are primarily OTPS, other than personal services. Janitorial sanitation for the current fiscal year is up slightly, 77,000. We finally got some weather this year to use all those contingencies for the start. The parking garage expenses were also up 350,000. This reflects the cost of capital improvements that we made, as we're required to accommodate the GSA contract. That cost actually is also offset too by a reimbursement from them. So net, that was a wash, but it shows in the parking garage expenses going up. And we also made some one-time payments for performance to the employees in the parking garage who haven't had raises for a while.
It's a contractual.
It's a contractual obligation, right? The money for the utilities part for electricity and water is up slightly, 69,000, but we're still approximately 300,000 below budget for the current fiscal year. And go ahead.
Yeah, we had substantially increased utilities a couple of years ago when we thought that the restrooms coming online at Chelsea Waterside and Gansevoort and 97, not just the restrooms, but the expanded park space was going to be a bigger impact to us.
Yeah.
We still are not 100% certain about where our utilities are going, but we are now downsizing again because we frankly have over budgeted for the last several years on utilities.
But yeah, we haven't, Pier 97 is not open yet, the restroom facility, the building facility, so there's still things to hit us, and there's a good increase expected in water this year also, and as we open these new facilities that have restrooms, we get wastewater charges, which are 67% higher than pure water charges, so there's more to come. Our PEP costs were unchanged, and our OTPS other, which is all sorts of bits and bobs, was down $227,000. So the total OTPS is up slightly for the current fiscal year by 269,000 to 17.2 million. And that's up a bit from FY24 also because of these new park areas that Ron was mentioning. Our total projected NOI for FY25 is at 1.2 million from our preliminary budget. It's at 17.4 million of a projected surplus, which is up from 15.5 million of a surplus that we actualized in FY24. So doing well on that side.
Can you spend a second on the reimbursement? Refresh my memory. What are those?
There are several. We have state reimbursements. Do you want to detail them?
Sure, so we get reimbursed for the insurance. So
Okay.
insurance reimbursement is the largest amount, and then we get reimbursement for the median work from DOT. That's a portion of it, and we got a small reimbursement for Amtrak project as well, whatever we spent on our consultants or reimbursed. So that makes up the number.
And the insurance number is just, the reimbursement is just on the commercial general liability. It's not on our property insurance. But it's significant. It's all of our general liability.
Thank you, that's fine.
And that's the biggest cost.
And I also just ask another basic question. I'll make sure I'm following this. I'm sorry if I'm slow. So
No,
you
no.
said the NOI at 17.4 million is 2 million better than the last year? That's a
Yes,
50
the
million.
previous fiscal year, correct.
So where is that $15 million number? When I look at the previous year, I'm seeing 32. Am I looking in the wrong place?
No.
So this 32 include the two extraordinary
Yeah.
payments, which is right here. So if we discount those
Included.
one-time.
So that's
payments,
excluding extraordinary items. Okay.
Right, that was before. So if you're looking at just an operating basis, because those were those two one-time payments that we got last year, 17.2 million.
So it's like
And you
excluding, got it.
include
Okay,
that,
this
right.
is not clear on the page. Okay,
Right, so if you want to compare apples to apples, I took that out.
got it.
Okay, for this budget update, we have not changed our projections on net CAPM spending and new capital spending completed before the end of the current fiscal year. So our projected operating surplus after net CAPM and CapEx is now 13.8.
Where is that? Oh. What?
And 13 million after the spending on new capital. So scroll down a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't see the 13.8. Where is it?
It actually shows up 13.9, sorry, typo. Not even a typo, I misread.
Sorry, that went-
13.9 million,
So the amount in the chart is accurate,
right,
13.37.
13.9.
13.9 million. Okay. We also added the
So, could I just point out that, Christine, this reflects the suggestion that you had, the last time we met. We now are showing the effect of the new capital construction. So we've added rows to this chart essentially to sort of do what you suggested the last time around.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you.
And that's what I was just about to point out. So the bottom line NOI which is at the bottom of the exhibit 1 table, which is after OPEB and depreciation, non-cash costs, before net CAPM, so it's net capital maintenance, our capital equipment expenditures, and net new capital expenditures. There's a projected 7.69 million deficit for FY25, which will be funded from our capital reserves. From our accumulated surplus reserves, general trust reserves.
Why 13 million better than what we expected?
Mhm.
So we vastly overestimated the amount of capital maintenance we'd be able to accomplish,
Okay.
not just this year, the previous year.
Good, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's
So
exactly.
it's not like these costs went away. There are costs that you should expect to see
Timing is
again
shifting.
and again in the future.
It's a
Some,
velocity.
right,
Yes.
some of
Yes.
the spending and work on new projects extended into the current fiscal year. That was mostly Pier 97.
We also, I mean, very significantly, Hudson Meridian, the contract that we have for Pier 40, which we can talk further about, but that is like sort of the master contract that we have with an initial funding of $25 million based on the board's approval. They are assessing the specific work that needs to be done for the structural repairs associated with the garage, as well as all of the continuing fire suppression work, the loading dock roof, all of the other repairs that need to be done here. It took us longer to procure that contract than we had originally anticipated. And then once they're on board, part of the whole purpose of that contract was to do a thorough inventory and then to strategize with us about the best way to effectuate the work, leading to a longer planning time, leading to a deferral in actually starting the bidding process for any of the specific construction assignments.
And you'll see that
Got it.
impact
Thank you.
when I talk about the suggested FY26 budget. There's a big impact because of that change in CAPM.
Just one small correction, so that it will be overall surplus of 13 million, and this non-cash item is basically cash is not coming out of the account. It's a P&L item, so nothing will be coming out of the operating reserve. We are actually adding to it by 30.
I think that's important to understand.
Okay, now let's go over the changes in the FY26 budget proposal. So going back up to the top, revenues. Total revenues have been adjusted up slightly from a previous 43.4 million to 43.85 million. This primarily reflects the extension of the Classic Car Club lease at Pier 76 through the end of the calendar year. So They'll be here for 3 more quarters. And that extension just happened now in the middle of March. On the expense side, for personal services, there were also just some slight tweaks. Payroll was up slightly by 60,000. Fringe benefits have increased. They reflect the increases, the small increase in payroll, plus the premiums for paid family leave, which we're adding in this upcoming fiscal year. We're adding that coverage as a benefit. On the OTPS side, there's a $505,000 increase overall. That's a 2.5% increase. Primarily, this is due to janitorial sanitation expenses, as new contracts for the Joe Fund and NYSID were negotiated just recently, and they will come in effect on April 1st. So that expense is going up. We also added an extra 100,000 for utilities. We knocked it down to 2 million. We're putting it back up to 2.1 million just to take care of any uncertainties that we have. So total operating expenditures increase of 660,000 and a slight operating surplus reduction of 230,000. That'll result in a 7.5 million budgeted FY operating surplus, which is pre-capital spending and non-cash expenditures. Okay, so now we come to what's the effective CAPM, because that has changed. Do you want to go to Exhibit 7?
Sure.
So we can show what the CAPM projects are. So the CAPM projects are shown in the different categories in Exhibit 7 in the package. Pictures, because those numbers are, yeah, just move them, yeah. The pictures at the top. There you go. All right. So the January budget had a total of 49 million of CAPM spending. Can you scroll so you can see that? Good. So that bottom right-hand number was 49 million in the January version. Now it's 31.615 million. The biggest change was in the CAPM projects listed for Pier 40, which are now 17.8 million roughly. They were at 39.2 million in the January. So that's the effect of getting everything online, getting Hudson Meridian online, working with them, looking at the phasing, and really most of these projects will begin in earnest after they've been bid out. The construction really won't begin until the major work until September. So what you're seeing there is like a half a year's worth of capital work on Pier 40. So next year, that number is going to go up. This is mostly being paid out of our remaining proceeds of the air rights sales at Pier 40, which are just under $20 million. So most of this Pier 40 will be paid out of that. The projected deficit after net CAPM is now 7.4 million. So if we want to go back to the first table, you'll see now. Let's look at the CAPM, total CAPM number is, there you go. So we're also expecting less outside money to reimburse us for the CAPM next year. That would be a total of 16.78 million. And when I say outside, that's really not outside. Most of that is not state and city. It's our balance of our air rights sales at Pier 40. But that'll end up in an operating surplus, a deficit, excuse me, after net CAPM of $7.3 million. After we look at the net capital spending on new projects next year, capital construction, no, see right there. is expected to be about 6.23 million, 4.5 million of which will be reimbursed by available government and restricted park funds, which are air right funds. So after that, we'll end up with a deficit of 9.1 million instead of the 20.8 million that was originally proposed in January before we adjusted the capital maintenance program at Pier 40. So as always, we may find some additional external resources for some CAPM expenditures, and that would benefit our bottom line. And following this through down to the bottom, looking at NOI before CAPM and after non-cash charges, which are significant. Depreciation is almost 19 million, and OPEB, which is a highly variable number, is at 9 million this year estimated. The NOI is budgeted at a deficit of 20 million.
And what you mean by deficit is that you're going to use your reserves, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, no, so.
Well, not for, yeah.
So
Go
this,
ahead.
this is a P&L impact. We actually should stop here. So you will see a negative impact in the
Exactly.
reserves for $9 million. This will be part
That's
of our
non-cash,
P&L,
yeah.
but not actually cash
Exactly.
coming out.
So it's really $9 million from reserves.
So what is the 20 again? The 20 million down there?
That's when you take into effect the non-cash charges for depreciation
Oh, okay.
and post-employment benefits, which is our healthcare benefits for employees, and that's an actuarial valuation that's out of our hands.
I got it.
Yep.
I got it.
Variable. So bottom line, what are the risks to this budget? In addition to the typical economic risks that you'd have, and that would affect primarily our tenant revenues and parking garage results. This year, we've got tariffs, which pose a price risk in construction because rebar is steel and cement comes from Mexico, and both of these factor into the parking garage CAPM projects. So
Every project we
we'll
would
see.
do
Yeah.
probably has
Yeah.
that green
Yeah,
steel.
yeah.
Not to mention timber, which mostly comes from Canada.
So
Even utilities, right? Because
it would, yeah, we'll see. So that's one risk. The parking garage project is large and complicated. It's sprinkler repair and repairs to the garage itself, done in phasing. What's changed is now they're doing each section, and both the repair and the regular garage repair is helping. But if we get hiccups in that, if something happens there, that could also affect our parking garage revenues, because we've got to move people around out of those areas of the garage into another area. So there's going to be very active management of our parking garage spaces next year. And that's going to be primarily driven by how our construction program is going at the garage.
So we've had to do that before here. It is tricky. The phasing concept for the work that Hudson Meridian will be bidding out for us anticipates doing work in blocks of roughly 70 cars at a time and shifting those cars all around the facility. So it is going to be a lot of staff work, but the planning is being carefully done in a way that we believe that we can manage. There's an offset. We are reducing the amount of parking income ID. I think you were talking about that, or you noticed that earlier, sort of in anticipation of all of this work that will be happening at Pier 40 for the next several years.
Got it. And I take it from an operating cash flow point of view, we're pretty comfortable, right? Operating cash, I mean, we've got the $9 million deficit this year, but we're also projecting the 13 better the year before, right? So cash is not a concern.
No, cash is not a concern.
Right.
And I'm knocking on the wood on the table. So the other thing that's new in this package, and you can go to the capital table, is we kind of expanded the capital plan table, which is at the end of your package. that.
Christine, again, this was someone at your suggestion.
Pictures. There you go. So now we've added typically before, we just showed what the spending was going to be on new capital projects in the current fiscal year, and those are those two shaded columns that you see, FY26 budget and FY26 funding source. We added over to the left the full estimated cost of the project, the spend to date, and then the full project funding sources. So you have the full project costs and funding sources, and then what we spent in our current fiscal year that we're in, FY25, and then what we're going to spend in FY26. And the
I love it.
and the estimated completion date.
Glad we executed.
I
All
love it.
here in one place rather than flipping around. And you can see that most of the money that we're spending next year on the capital program is for planning and design on new projects. And it's going to be capital maintenance, everything that was set forth in Exhibit 7 that's really going to be sucking up time and money. So that's it. If you
I'm
have any
sorry
questions.
I'm sorry if I missed this. If I'm reading this correct, the CAPM from the last proposed budget went down like $18.5 million. What's that? What project are we not doing or kicking?
We
I
did
should
not
keep eating
do, we barely touched Pier 40, and we did not do marine repairs, because we did not have initially the contractor, and we still do not have the regulatory approvals that are needed for all of that work. So
So that
it's both
was,
of those
yeah,
things.
that's where we fell short in the current fiscal year. And then for the upcoming fiscal year, we revised the capital maintenance spend downward because of the sequencing of the projects and also waiting for these permits too.
So last time around, this schedule would have shown that Pier 40, that 17.8 would have been 35.
It was like
In
49.
January, so I think you need a little bit more context on Pier 40 right now.
Yeah.
We have the Hudson Meridian contract that the board approved was funded at an additional, at an initial amount of $25 million, but we knew that that would not be the ultimate cost of doing all of the structural repairs required by state and city codes for the garage work, as well as all of the sprinkler, et cetera, work, as well as the loading dock, as well as the leaks in the roof, as well as a variety of other things that we may ultimately tackle through that contract. I have a presentation that I would like to give to the board more fully, not just to this group, about sort of the next few years at Pier 40. But effectively, priority repairs, just priority repair categories for Pier 40 are roughly $60 million from what we're looking at right now. And there are additional things that we might choose or need to do as well above that. As Kim said, we have about 22 and change million dollars left from the development rights, and then the one-time deal from the property across the street that will offset roughly a third of those priority repair amounts. But last year, when we were putting this plan together, and even in January, when we were putting the preliminary budget together, we thought that we might be able to do more faster. And in reality, because of the swing spaces with garages, the need to keep the ball fields functioning, our own offices here at Pier 40, literally every room in Pier 40 is going to pretty much have something done to it. The bite-sized pieces of what we're working on are reduced in scale for the phases that will be done at a time, so that we can accomplish all of this. And just the coordination is a lot. So basically, we are moving more slowly with respect to the planning of this, but hopefully the careful planning that we're doing now and for the last several months will result in something that we can sustain over probably 3 years of construction for this core priority work.
So that number that you see for Pier 40, Jeffrey, is really mostly half a year of construction, not a full year of construction. And that, it's 17.78 now. It was 39.2 in the January budget before we went through really fine tuning all the sequencing, figuring out how the logistics of how we're going to do it.
We're, for reference, we were about to go out to bid with the phasing sort of plan that we have for a couple of these areas of Pier 40. And are projecting that that work would be able to start, as Kim said, in September. We'll be able to provide updates on the actual costs of these as the bid prices come in for the work.
So that could mean some uncertainty hitting us on garage repairs, but I don't, excuse me, parking garage revenue. The second half of the year, potentially into next year, depending on how well this all goes.
Yeah, we think we have planned for that though.
We've added
Jeff-
haircuts into our parking
Jeff-
revenue now.
Yeah, Jeff, did we answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, you think that still, that the 13 million of parking income does reflect
Yes,
that level of construction?
We do.
yes.
Remind me, are we done? There's no more pile repairs necessary per 40, right? We finished all that?
Correct. The only area that we didn't do a few years ago was the area under the finger pier. The appendage on the southwest side, because frankly, we didn't know, that doesn't have the same sort of operational utility, and the costs were sort of extraordinary there. So we'll look at that independently at some point, but everything else, literally every other pile was done.
And I have a question about the projects. Did you include anything for the connection with the on the southern part of the park, which connects to the other parts?
Our assumption is that that would be part of the Battery Park City construction associated with their improvements. We would not believe that we would have to spend
Okay.
on that.
Oh, and then a second thing, a little bit tangential, but not completely. We have been reviewing Community Board 4. We have been reviewing the construction and the plans for the fans, the gateway fans on the 29th Street site. Are you familiar with that?
In concept, I know.
Okay.
They were necessary, but not the details.
Right. So they have proposed the fan, which is probably 12-story high, and architected like other fans on in the city. And we have challenged them on saying, why don't you build a larger building, and the fan would be the base of the building. And if this was the case, we were hoping that you could do some air right transfer to that location and generate some revenue.
Love the way you think, Christine.
So that's, I have put that back to them, and I think we need to write to them. We didn't write to them anything, but we're going to write to them along those lines and copy you on that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, anybody being reminded that is, particularly if our local community boards are willing to consider, height or density or other things like that, certainly being reminded that we're an opportunity that can also end up benefiting the community if it helps with Pier 76 construction or otherwise is great. So thank you.
Okay, so if there are no more other.
Are there any others?
I have something's bothering me. I think the way you're showing the restricted park funds, essentially reduce the amount of capital we're spending. That's, I don't know, it's a little disingenuous. You're treating it the same way that the state and the city are actually writing a check for insurance. That's a reimbursement. That's fair. using our own money, even if it's restricted, I don't know. I don't like the way we're reducing the CAPM. It's making it look lower, like we're still spending that money. I think in
Yes,
a
we
different
are.
way than if we're getting that money from a third party.
And well, right, so that's lumped in with the money that comes from the state when the state uses state bonds and the city when the city uses city bonds. And then the third pile of money in that category is this. It's this restricted money that we have.
Oh, I
Yeah,
understand.
Jeff is
I'm
suggesting,
I understand, yes,
saying-
yes, no, I know.
I'm saying I don't think it's fair to look at it that way, or at least out of context with how much that amount is and what it's restricted for. And I don't know, it's different than a reimbursement. It's not a reimbursement.
It's
We're
not a
actually spending our
reimbursement.
money.
It is restricted for capital needs. And some of it is restricted geographically.
but we could, I get what you're saying, like differentiating between what is Hudson River Park asset directly versus what is not. Right, so we could unbundle those two. We could have a separate line for the reimbursements versus an allocation of, an application of park restricted funds. Is that basically what you're suggesting, Jeff?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to create more work. I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
that's
that
pretty
it's-
straightforward, but I think we could, would that,
I mean, yes, that's what I'm saying, but I guess what I'm zooming out, my real concern is this, like, in my mind, I'm still not so sure that we should be spending all this money at Pier 40. And I don't like the added, and I'm hearing a little bit of, well, we have that money anyway and nothing else to do with it, so we may as well. I just don't agree with that.
so I would say that, this is a conversation that we should have. It's the always conversation we should have about Pier
Yeah.
40. Just as in the past, at certain times where we had to redo the roof or had to do certain other work, some of the work at Pier 40 that is in the priority repair category is really not particularly a choice. It's not a nice extra. It's
Yeah,
worth it.
understood. Understood. Look, I'm probably I don't know. I'm just, how much of the restricted funds are really only restricted to Pier 40? I don't remember that being.
Yeah, so we have the balance of the development rights money, which is about 18 and change, plus this 3.2 from 4 million from property across the street and negotiation that Madeline had at one point. That is Pier 40.
Okay,
We
so it's
have
more
about-
than I thought. Okay.
Yes.
That's fine.
We have about 40 million roughly remaining from block 675 sales for development rights that can only be used within community board 4. I may not have that number accurate right now. We can get it for you, but basically,
That's fine.
when we did that, those development right deals, we committed that we would build a Chelsea waterside bathroom building. We committed that we would finish Pier 97, and a large portion of that is for new construction, the trust share of the 29th to 44th Street New Park area. And we also have a 20% set aside for other future work. Might be Pier 76, our share of it at some point in the future, or a portion of our share of it in the future, or capital maintenance in CB4. So those are the principal pots of restricted monies.
And that number is actually 35 million.
The balance.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yep.
So that's we don't have the choice of spending that at Pier 40 because it has to be geographically in CB4.
What is, Jeffrey, what is the number you are worried about? Is that I'm trying to follow the numbers, what line, and the 9 million? Is that what you're talking about?
I am talking about the
Yeah.
16.78 million.
Oh, the 16.78 million, yeah. Well,
So-
maybe it would make sense to have like an exhibit or an appendix where you show what you just told us.
Well,
The different parts.
so what we could do is clearly, it's easy here. There's even room already for another line there. So that 16.78 million can be split into what comes from state and city funds and what comes from restricted park funds. So you can see those two numbers. And
Right.
I will tell you that that composition changes from year to year depending on what project we're doing. So that does change the amount that we're going from our restricted funds. Now, the balances of the restricted funds are set forth in our financials every year in a footprint. I don't know if you want to add.
So, I mean, I think that, this is, I think we should unbundle this here. I think that the Pier 40 discussion is something, and the discussion about application of reserves and philosophy and all of that is a separate discussion. It's not just a budgetary discussion. And that's one that I'm eager to have with all of you.
Yeah, I agree.
Great.
Just to give you an idea, so the only other money we have in this reimbursement amount is 1 million from the HUD for the Pier 40 safety work. Other than that, everything is their rights, so it's 15 and change is their rights, and 1 million stuff from HUD.
Right.
Which is different from what it was in the previous year, where the money was coming for expenses. Sorry, there's too many people talking. Was coming
I guess
from-
the point is that wherever there's an opportunity for material like discretion on capital funds or capex funds, that it's either obvious or we have a chance to review and discuss.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, you know, and that is, that's a budgetary concern at this point. But to the extent that we are spending the balance of the development rights funds from Pier 40, or frankly, those Block 675 funds for the Chelsea projects on projects that we committed to during those transactions to Department of City Planning or the City Planning Commission and the communities, I would say that that was and is understood by the trust to be sort of our obligation. We're not taking from something else that wasn't already in what was discussed publicly at that point. The bigger philosophical question is, what do we do with respect to funds that are not in those buckets, right?
Right.
And that's a separate board conversation.
So, if you have any more suggestions, let us know. We will be finalizing the entire budget package this afternoon, sending it to the entire board. There'll be a full presentation of the budget at the Thursday board meeting. We will need a quorum for that board meeting, so we're looking forward to see your bright shiny faces. And you might want to make a comment at the board meeting of your review also of the budget when we make our presentation. Okay. Anything else?
Christina,
Fighting
looks like
people?
you're speaking. You're on mute.
I said thank you so much for adding the formats we discussed. It's very helpful.
I think they were, it's useful for everyone, I think. Thank you. Good suggestion. All right, we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
All right, thanks all.